Everybody wants to be somebody and somebody big or something spectacular. Every little kid, I think, wants to be a movie star or, basketball player, or, somebody rich and famous. Being an entertainer has saved my life.
Do you feel like you're a superhero?
Absolutely. I was a 15-year-old kid that started working out with weights. I didn't get along with my parents, and I was kicked in and out of my home from the time I was very young. It really was hard on me, and it made me want to be by myself a lot, do things on my own. My mother did the Jane Fonda tapes, and I was kind of a compulsive little kid, and I started doing the tapes with my mother, except instead of doing them one time, I would do them 5 times. The more I lifted weights and the harder I worked at it, the more I saw my body change, and it just really fascinated me that you could mold your body that way. If the rest of the kids were going to the movies on a Friday or Saturday night, I was on my front porch with the cars driving by, and I never had dates, and I never, had much of a social life, but to me, I just thought it was so cool, and it made me feel so powerful when I could go in there and lift these weights that the guys were doing next to me, and people would look at me, and it was such an attention grabber. Women are more concerned about their weight and, what they're eating. I was called everything from, a man to a lesbian to just extremely rejected and extremely unaccepted.
The Intercontinental Champion, Chyna!
Did you watch wrestling growing up?
No, I was never a fan of wrestling. I had an extremely troubled relationship with my father, who was an alcoholic, and my mother, who was a typical codependent, revolving door marriages in and out, and never got along with either one of them. I was changing schools every 6 months. When I was 15, I went to my first concert ever, and it was a John Cougar and Deep Purple concert. It was the first time I ever drank, too. Rebellious parents not understanding the type of music. Pat Benatar, I was so into Pat Benatar. Cheap Trick, I was listening to everything from Prince and Samantha Fox to Led Zeppelin and your typical Pink Floyd college music.
Let's talk about who
I was always very smart, and I think that was part of my personality, where I might get an assignment, and the assignment might be for 2 weeks ahead, but I would have to do it that night because just in my mind I was just very compulsive about it. In high school I excelled greatly in Spanish. Any type of scholarships or any type of extracurricular activity that I could do and get credit for, I took on. I won a scholarship from the United Nations, which took me to Spain, and I graduated while I was in Spain. We were supposed to go over and live with the family, and when I went over, I lived with the family for about a month, and then I actually got some job in a bar, worked illegally in the foreign country, and got my own apartment. Now I look back and I think, how did I ever do that? Just pick up and go to this foreign country all by myself. It gave me a confidence to know that I can do basically anything I want to do. When I graduated, I just stayed for another 6 months until I figured out what I wanted to do, which was come back and study in college. My father had this big plan for me. I was going to join the military, and he was going to pick my school. And when I came back from Spain, it was going to be all set, And so I decided to take a chance on some of that guidance, and I let him pick my school, which was the University of Tampa. And after the first year and a half, 2 years, I started thinking that I'd done all this stuff, I'd been overseas, and was making all these grades of my own, and lifting weights, and making changes of myself, and I'm still letting this guy who was, treated me terribly and been such a thorn in my side control my life. I just ended up breaking away from my father and going my own route. I joined the Peace Corps. And I went to Costa Rica, and I was supposed to have gone to teach people how to read and write in Spanish. My very first week there was an after-tremor of an earthquake. All of a sudden, the walls started shaking, and pots and pans were quivering back and forth, and everybody started screaming and yelling. It was quite a unsettling time in my life, and I wasn't really sure what I was doing there or what the reason for me being there was, experiencing this natural disaster. I was supposed to have stayed 2 years, and that wasn't going to keep me satisfied. I really wanted to be an actress, and then I wanted to be a producer, and then I was going to write my own songs, and then I was going to take my own record label. I wanted to be an athletic trainer for the Secret Service. That's what I was going to do. Working with foreign language and my, physical attributes, I just thought being a spy would be perfect. Can you imagine being like this female, cool James Bond spy, athletic trainer? And I actually interviewed with them for like 3 years, and I just didn't continue. I got tired of the whole game and ended up traveling around the country some more. I was all over the place, and I was, in the meantime, thinking, I'm like 25 years old here. I think I better start figuring out what I want to do. I tried to do every single entertainment avenue that I could possibly do. Joni Lauer was desperately trying to break into show business, but was still very also insecure. I did singing telegrams where I wore the big retarded, Valentine's gimmicks. I had to go through the doors sideways at, auto dealers and offices, and I popped out at cakes, and I belly danced, and got to sing goofy little jingles, and I had a blast doing it. I remember thinking, okay, that's not really working. Nobody's discovered me yet. I felt in here that I had this gift, and I was so strong, and it motivated me to push forward.
Do you remember any of those jingles or any of those songs?
No, a lot of them are too dirty. I'd get in trouble.
Welcome to the future with an all-new 10 Spot.
People that have stardom in their future is not necessarily because of one thing. Most of them have what I like to call the X factor.
Oh, make me over.
It's very difficult to say, I'm going to go off and be this movie star, or, do the things that I wanted to do. I was a very unhappy person, when you're striving so hard towards something and you want it so badly, the ordinary day just isn't good enough for you. And at that point also, I trained with men because there weren't any other women in the gym to train with. I had a gentleman called Mel Peabody come up to me, and he was a trainer out of Lawrence, Massachusetts. He wanted to just try me out and see if he could create this female boxing star. So I started training with him, and I just loved that raw physical power of punching something or somebody and getting in there and just cutting loose and giving it 110%. I was about to have my first fight when I got hired by the WWF.
When I look back on the time that she's spent boxing and stuff like that, I see her as she's a hell of an athlete, and she loves athletic stuff. She loves going out there and being an athlete and doing all the intense things, the challenge of it and all that stuff. But unless they would have let her do like a soft shoe between rounds or a comedy act between rounds in the boxing matches, she wouldn't have been happy, because her true heart's in entertaining.
When I first started, which was 3 years ago, nobody wanted me there. The guys were cruel to me, and they didn't want me there, and there was no way they were going to fight me. When I go against another man in a match, people are going to, they're looking for me to fail. I was this freak of nature, and it was this man's world, and no way was this woman going to be on the road with them. And at that time, we'd really only had any women that were valets or kind of that walked the guys down to the ring. They were the beauty queens. Most people thought that, first of all, I was just hired because of my body.
She was trying to get in the business. I was looking to bring somebody in as a bodyguard.
I had to work real hard at that and train just like they did, and I got the crap beaten out of me on a daily basis to learn how to do that, and I took it. And you have to make your stuff look strong and believable, and long hours of hard work and hard sweat.
She has to be able to overcome guys' latent fear of a woman beating them up on national television.
And the more I did that, and the more the crowd reacted to me, the more I started earning the guys' respect.
The physicality of it is undeniable. You can't get in the ring with a person that size and not be physical with them. When that person lands on you, it's a 300-pound man landing on you, and that, she has to be able to physically move them around. They have to be able to physically move her around.
It's an incredible toll on your body, and you get real tired of hearing the two guys at the airport, talking about how they saw that gimmicked chair over the head of somebody.
Get out of there! He's got hold of
There's not many women in the world that could get into the ring with a, 250 to 300 pound to 500 pound guy, depending on who she's in there with, and can physically stand toe to toe with that person.
Chyna being out there in wrestling has given women an opportunity to look at a big girl, a pretty girl, a sexy girl, a do-it-all girl, an equal that is still feminine. And I think it's awesome. There aren't enough females making their mark out there in important male positions. Since I've started, I've gotten so much feedback from little girls and from mothers that say, my daughter used to play the, bimbo that walked the guy to the ring, and now, my son is one guy and my daughter plays you. They treat me like $1 million, and I have about 50 big brothers now that, let me kick him in the nuts for a living. One of Chyna's biggest moves is the flipper. I'm going to use Greg as my volunteer here. Grab that person's head, pull him into me, and as hard as I possibly could, I would connect right here with my forearm on their head. They would go down in one shot with that. That's a pretty hard blow.
How'd you end up with the name Chyna?
Really, it's not the name, how I got Chyna is not that interesting of a story. The company had a list of names, and some of them were really queer. I thought, I had like Venus on them, or Shira or something, and Fallon, which is very Falcon Crest, and Chyna just happened to be one of the names on there, and Triple H and Shawn Michaels liked Chyna. They thought that it was kind of an oxymoron. It represented this tiny, petite Chyna item, and I was so opposite from that. Just because of my physique, it was very easy for me to go out and portray this role of this really badass female. I'm going to beat you up, and I was, a bad guy for almost 3 years. I was hated. People hated me, and it was easy to make people hate me.
Chyna, what's she gonna do to Jericho? Chyna in the ring. And X-Pac is tapping out. What's going on? What the hell? Chyna!
There was a stripper that lived down the road from me, and her name was Chyna, her stage name. So every time I used Chyna, I thought of this stripper down the road from me. It had Chyna, but hey, no offense to all you strippers out there, but it took a while for me to really realize that I was getting a good reaction from the audience, to know that Chyna was a pretty cool thing.
Don't treat me like a woman. Don't treat me like a man. Don't treat me like you know me.
The guys actually ended up naming me the ninth wonder of the world, and that was because I think that they felt that I was really different and very unique, and that there had never been another Chyna, and in their eyes, and they started, naming me this ninth wonder of the world, which is an awesome compliment, wouldn't you say? It's a whole overall look, the black leather and the muscles go together. Chyna is menacing. She's powerful. She'll knock you out with one punch. I think my overall package defines me. Chyna doesn't smile. She's out there to do a job, and she's out there to kick some ass. I'm not a small girl. I'm a big girl. My breasts would define me because they're like big and round. They're like really round and they're big. So they make me even larger than life because I have big breasts. Say, for example, if I have to cover somebody, it's a lot easier for me to bend over, and I'm really pinning them, on the mat that way. Okay. Or if somebody hits me really hard, they could just bounce right off, and I'll never even feel it. Half of it has been genetics for me, and the other half has been my ability to back up those genetics. And there's not a lot of 200-pound, 5'10" women walking around that could wrestle. I have a really tight butt too. Did I mention that?
No, you didn't.
So when I have my video that comes out in the spring, you'll know how to get like a tight butt and keep your breasts round. I've always loved music, and I come from an extremely musical family as well. I remember when I was little, my mother played the cello, which is how I decided I wanted to play the cello as well. This group of old guys that, when I lived in Florida after going to school there, and they were playing at one of the local bars, and so I went up to them one night and said, I'd really like to sing with you if you could teach me some of that stuff. They sang all oldie songs, the horns, and the leader played the B3 organ, which most people don't even know what that is now. And so I started going over to their house and practicing with them, and we started doing the big tours of the Elks clubs, where there were 90-year-old people getting tipped off their rockers, falling off the bar stools. And, the first set, everybody would be sober, so we weren't very good, and then the guys would belly up to the bar after the first set, and by the second set, we were doing pretty good and sounding really great. If I sat down and put all my weight right into their kneecaps like this and push back, they're gonna go down. There's no way to go but down. Wrestling is such an instant adrenaline rush.
I guess I didn't know.
You have to be an extremely confident person to walk out in front of anywhere from 20,000 to 60,000 people. When you can go out and do that in a wrestling arena in front of 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people, and people stand up and clap and think that you did this amazing job. There's no other rush like that in the world. Most of the time we go out there and we get one chance to do things. I don't get 5 takes in front of a camera to do something right. This would be more my style. There's always one place that you could really get a guy. Sorry, Greg. There's so many people that want to be involved in wrestling. Football players, basketball players. You had the whole Dennis Rodman thing. We had Lawrence Taylor wrestle for us, Mike Tyson, Arnold Schwarzenegger come to us. I think most of them think that wrestling is going to be easy for them, and yeah, when I retire from football, play football for a while, I'm going to go do that wrestling thing. Lawrence Taylor came and tried to wrestle with us, and he said that it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. And it's the art of making it look easy and believable what we do, but it's not everybody can do it. One of the misconceptions I think people have is, oh, it's fake, all those chairs are fake and the tables are all fixed and they know how to land, it doesn't hurt their body, It looks easy and it may look fake, but it's not, and your body takes a hell of a beating.
For hanging in there, taking all that punishment and being so resilient and not giving up.
I've been very lucky. I've had a few breaks and cuts and bruises and aches and pains. I've never been severely injured, and I'm one of the few. Being a woman, being Chyna, I travel with about 50 guys on the road every day too, so that's a whole different beast in itself. I love every day going and dressing in where else can I wear this getup and get away with it?
Professional wrestling, you can call it a sport or you can call it entertainment, you can call it whatever you want. We're about reaction.
I don't think wrestling is going to be a part of the Olympics. We are entertainment. People are so worried about whether it's fake or whether it's real that they forget that we are these people going out there that not only trying to entertain you, but we are athletes. I find myself when I do a lot of interviews out on the defensive. We have to defend ourselves, and that is because we've been put down for so long. The only reason they're taking notice of us now is because they have to. I'm very grateful to be this woman in this position, but I think overall it's great that the wrestlers as a whole, entertainers, are finally being looked at as athletes. Athletes, singers, actors, models, it's all a form of entertainment. And, I think that crossover is a wonderful form of entertainment. It just adds more to the mix. That's one of the things I love about what I do the best because, I'm not just an athlete. I'm an athlete. I'm an entertainer. I'm a superhero. I'm a rock and roller. You put those things together and there's something for everybody to watch. We have a new generation of stars that are so multi-dimensional, multi-talented, and the more you make those things available to them, the more they can show you. Nowadays, people expect so much more from you. We're not insulting people's intelligence. We're not telling you that it's for real. What we want to do is entertain you. The people that have belittled us for so long are now saying, all right, all these people are watching. What is it that they like about it? They can't ignore it. You know, we're getting bashed. It's too violent. Oh, little kids are hurting themselves. Oh, you know, you're belittling women. We're doing it all in fun and entertainment, but you turn on another television show and they're raping people and killing people, and nobody ever says a word. I'm probably one of the most recognizable female athletes in the world right now. If I go to India, people know who I am. If I go to Germany, people are there with posters to sign. How's that demean me? That makes me one of the most unique women in the world that's been able to do that, and I haven't done that by taking my top off. Well, I don't think women have impacted wrestling. I think Chyna has impacted wrestling. I'd like to see more women like me out there. I've worked all of my life to get to this moment, and the moment that I do not want is to stay home with a screaming baby and a husband that wants me to cook and clean for him. It's still hard a little bit sometimes because even family doesn't understand what we do and the hours and how much time it takes up. As much as I do and fans like to see me, I'm still a novelty item, and it's hard to work around that sometimes. All over the world there's, you know, millions of people that would like to be wrestlers. Of those millions of men, there's only a handful. And of that tiny handful of male superstar wrestlers, there's me. Chyna is to WWF what the ball is to basketball.
We entertain better than anybody else on the face of this planet, and she does that very well because she has a passion to be an entertainer.
Right, look. See, it just made you laugh right there, see?
Right, yeah.
What's the name of the tape? Is it Chyna's tight butt?
It'll
or?
be Chyna. So Chyna's tight butt. That's a good, that's really good. Chyna is to WWF like the ball is to football. There's not another one of me. And I hope there are in the future. There are so many guys to kick in the nuts.
Except for me. Don't kick me in the nuts.